They say if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And if I did that, I wouldn't have a fucking YouTube channel. And so as the sun set on another NFL season, the dark days of the offseason are set upon us until the NFL draft, where Cleveland fans can once again have their hopes and dreams shattered like Jesse Pinkman and Walter White breaking up high quality meth. Here we have what all 32 NFL teams should do this offseason, and trust me, there isn't much nice going to be said here. Trigger warning, bitches. And before I get into this, I want to say ground rules. We are following the order of the upcoming NFL draft, which is interesting this year because nearly every team actually does have a first round pick. But I'm not here to tell you exactly who or what each team should draft. I'm really here to take trigger style shots at your squad. You'll see what I mean. Cleveland, I think you should look at relocating your franchise to the bottom of Lake Erie. Your historical season left you with no answers other than how many losses are possible in one season, and next year you might do it again. You have tanked your way to the #1 overall pick, which you will likely fuck up royally by taking a QB either named Josh Rosen or Baker Mayfield, and it would be a very Cleveland thing for them to take both with the 1 and the 4. My advice, you are at least 3 to 25 years away from putting up a contender. Draft a fat offensive lineman and keep Josh Gordon from smoking weed until the next collective bargaining agreement. The New York Giants. What a year, 3-13. Two things you need to do immediately. Fire your training and medical staff and trade Eli Rotting Apple for some baseball cards that have that awful gum in them. The dilemma begins with who should be taken at number 2, a QB for Eli to groom like Kevin Spacey, a left tackle that has a pulse, or a running back who could be a difference maker. Thank God Reese isn't there to fuck up this pick. This team has more issues than Caitlyn Jenner figuring out which bathroom to pee in, and they aren't going to be fixed in the draft. Better keep working on those end zone celebrations. There aren't going to be many next year. Indianapolis, your biggest question is what do you do with Andrew Luck? For the guy who Jim Irsay said he got rid of your greatest player of all time for more of these, you haven't even been close to more of them at all. Clearing out Chuck Pagano and his insane Groundhog Day rants leaves you with a smoldering pile of shit. One Josh McDaniels didn't even want to step in. What you need now is a new offensive line and some help on defense, and for God's sakes, tell Irsay to stop snorting blow and trying to run the team. Houston, you don't have a draft pick because you gave it to Cleveland, which sucks because a 4-12 team really does need a top 4 pick. Here's what you need to do. Get JJ Watt some new legs, and whatever cyborg dealership you get those from, give a pair to Deshaun Watson so that our fantasy teams can do better next year. Jadeveon Clowney played a full season and is looking like he has overcome the stigma from that one hit that made his life a living hell. Also, unless you open your wallet, your offensive line is probably gone via free agency. Good luck with that. Denver. When Kirk Cousins comes to town, make sure you offer to suckle his toes like Rex Ryan at an orgy. You need a QB so goddamn bad, you're probably going to back up the Brinks truck for a guy that the Redskins didn't want. That's not an insult, it's the fucking Redskins. Cousins is probably worth about 3 wins for your squad and restore the Tebow glory of 8-8. And if Cousins doesn't accept your offer to lick his toes, you can draft Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield and royally fuck that up. New York Jets. I have an idea. Start Christian Hackenberg. Clearly drafting QBs and not playing them is your MO. And hell, if the Eagles put their backup on out there and won a Super Bowl, why can't another bumbling team that wears green do the same? Oh, what's that? No, this is the Jets we're talking about here. What you need to do is slowly build up as the Patriots start to crumble. And by build up, I mean tank even further. Rewind to my first statement. Start Hackenberg and live the 0-16 dream. And try not to butt fumble as you go into the end zone. Tampa Bay. Your defense was remarkably inept last year. You ought to be like this kid and Google what the hell a pass rush is. You need D linemen and a secondary badly, and Jameis Winston has been decent, but he really doesn't have any weapons. Next year is a big year for the third-year starter, as you are going to figure out if he is the guy or if you need to move on. Oh, and something crab legs. Chicago. Well, after giving Mike Glennon $45 million and getting nothing out of him, you still don't have an offensive line that can keep Mitch Trubisky upright. You'll probably draft the best wide receiver available like Calvin Ridley, but that still doesn't address how inept you are on both sides of the ball. It probably hurt watching Alshon make great catches in the Super Bowl too. San Francisco. Well, all you gotta do is give Jimmy G all the money he wants and your problems are solved. Since your fans have been rubbing Crisco all over themselves after his first handful of games that have you ready to call him the GOAT, you better hope you use your ridiculous amount of cap space on things that you need, like interior linemen and targets for the league's newest version of Aaron Rodgers. You still have tons of problems as a team, but like waking up next to a dead prostitute, money and a few friends can solve a lot of problems. Oakland. You don't need to draft anyone. You already have the pieces of a team that won a shit ton of games 2 years ago, and you spent the money to line up a former announcer / horror movie star to coach your squad for the next 80 years or something. You have some glaring problems that even a healthy Derek Carr can't mask, like a weak defense for starters. My advice, don't let Marshawn anywhere near your team and move to Vegas while you can. Miami. Losing Ryan Tannehill forced you to sign a guy who should have damn well stayed the fuck retired. And now you have to give this team back to Tannehill, who has a surgically repaired leg and hopefully learned to meditate while he was out. I guess beating the Patriots in week 14 gives you hope that your team can actually be interested enough to show up in games next year. It's amazing how the team sometimes can take on the identity of the quarterback, isn't it? Maybe in the draft you should consider taking one then. Cincinnati. If being inept at your job and not winning a playoff game during your 15-year endeavor as head coach of the Bengals doesn't get you thrown out of there faster than Andy Dalton dashing the Ravens' playoffs hopes, then I don't know what gets you fired in Cincinnati. Oh wait, it gets you extended. And apparently this is a real thing with no takebacks, as you have a lot of other glaring problems, like letting most of your offensive line go last year to free agency. Picking at 12 is going to leave you with not much to choose from in terms of replacing Dalton. So you're probably stuck with him. Thanks, Cincy, you are the definition of insanity. Washington. Well, you fucked up with that whole Cousins thing, but at least you have an older and less clutch QB to not take you over the hump. Of course, Danny Boy Snyder is probably salivating at Baker Mayfield because he actually has a personality and isn't boring and dedicated to winning like Cousins is. You actually have a decent defense if you put some weapons around. Well, what's that? You traded Kendall Fuller for Smith too? Too bad you can't blame that shitty move on someone being drunk. Green Bay, your only offseason move is to hook Aaron Rodgers up to whatever stem cell IV you need to get him and pray that his shoulder holds up all next year. Who cares that your defense was as porous as using a laundry basket to haul water? No need to address anything other than making sure Aaron is happy and banging starlets and is back to masking all of your problems with his magic right arm. Good luck with that shit, Packers. Arizona. Palmer has retired. Next season is probably Larry Fitz's farewell tour. It may be the time to fleece the Browns and trade up and get one of the decent QBs in the draft. I know it's cliche to just gloss over your other problems, but you need decent talent under center like thirsty Instagram models need attention. Also, not losing your best threat out of the backfield week 1 would be good for you. Next year is going to suck for the mathematically worst franchise in the league, Baltimore. Still smarting after getting ripped from the playoffs via a cesarean performed by Dr. Andy Dalton? What you need to do is get Joe Flacco some weapons so that you no longer have any goddamn excuses as to why he isn't elite. Sure, he won you a Super Bowl, but so did Trent fucking Dilfer. Next season is put up or shut up for Joey Flacco, so you better hope you make the playoffs. LA Chargers. How come nobody is talking about putting Phillip Rivers down like a horse with a torn ACL? Every press conference that Brady, Roethlisberger, and Manning has to endure includes at least one question about retirement. I guess the athletic embodiment of Ned Flanders is too thirsty for postseason success that nobody even suspects he may be getting old. It's not like you can notice a flaw in his mechanics. I would talk about your needs, but this team is about as exciting as watching the Puppy Bowl. Oh, and fuck you, Spaniels. Seattle. No secret here, you need help up front to protect Russell Wilson. You still have vital pieces on defense, but the Madden curse attacks Sherman and Cam Chancellor's career is in serious doubt. You also don't have a running game, which is what every team that plays drip football needs. Should have won that second one when you had a chance. Your window is closing like Toys R Us. Dallas, here's my offseason advice to you. Try not having your players get caught up in the wheel of discipline, especially that cuddly Ewok that likes to grab random titty meat. Des Bryant's speed rating is starting to drop and the defense is aging like fancy French cheese in the sun. You still have a stout offensive line, but with Sean Lee becoming mythical like Bob Sanders, you also have a lot of holes on your defense. Really, why am I offering any advice? Please just take a knee for all of next season too while you're at it. Detroit. After Cincinnati gut punched you too, it was time to bring in a guru. Behold, Matt Patricia, the D coordinator who just got torched for 41 points in the Super Bowl. Actually, that was a great hire, but we all know how diseased Belichick's coaching tree is out on the branches. But probably the best thing for this team is an attitude adjustment. On a side note, has anyone ever heard Matt Patricia actually talk?
Help us win in whatever packages we had, a couple different situations came up and everything.
Buffalo. You have 2 picks back-to-back in this draft, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell you that your QB situation needs some serious fixing. Unless, of course, you think Nate Peterman is the guy. That was funny. You dragged the Bills Mafia along for 1 playoff game, which you looked decent in, though your offense was more impotent than Kevin Spacey at a bikini contest. But really, I don't care what you do on the field, just keep doing more of this shit off the field. Kansas City, choking and going full read aside. Even though you got a nice pickup in Kendall Fuller, you still don't really have a QB. You have a guy who didn't play much and is untested, and though he could be good, you just dumped a guy who can clearly lead you to the playoffs and a first-round choke. Now you have a guy who you don't know can do either. You don't have much of a pass rush, and it isn't going to get any better from the draft because you don't have a pick. You traded it for the guy who is going to start next year. Oh, and Andy Reid, eat a dick. LA Rams. Everything is coming up Millhouse for this surprising team that shit the bed in the first round. Boy genius McVay and his crew have some tough decisions to make, like whether to let Jackson Heights own Sammy Watkins, Trumaine Johnson, Connor Barwin, or LaMarcus Joyner walk. Some parts of this team are aging, and that showed in the playoffs as they laid an egg. And they need Goff to look like the high draft pick that he was to continue to be successful. Also, your kicker for the last 3 games was a stockbroker. Carolina, is there a way to acquire some type of protection in the offseason for Cam Newton's head? Hopefully that protection also covers his mouth.
It's funny to hear a female talk about routes.
One thing Cam lacks sorely is one of those giant fast receivers that leaps up out of the air and latches onto the ball like a condor on a toddler. So they might be looking to add that in the draft or in free agency. This team has a lot of pieces, however, I don't know if I am buying or selling them for next year. But I know one guy who is. Tennessee. Tennessee has some surprising pieces of the puzzle. Unfortunately for them, those puzzle pieces belong in Marcus Mariota's brain, as he needs to figure out who he is as a QB. We saw Jared Goff and the Church of Carson Wentz develop into formidable threats. Can the Hawaiian Golden Boy find his stride now that a guy whose name literally means nonsense is no longer his head coach? Also, you let the Pats get all up in Mariota's grill like water bugs on a summer drive through Alabama. Better draft some O-linemen. Atlanta. You had a chance to stop this awful Eagle run before it could even start, yet you and your super-powered offense couldn't get anything going. Of course, Alex Levitre is pedestrian and Wes Schweitzer is a backup and Matt Ryan is a douche. I don't know why I had to get that jab in there. Don't let this assessment distract you from the fact that must not do it. Okay, you blew a 28-3 lead. I feel dirty. New Orleans. You might need some help in the defensive back department. Next, Pittsburgh. Here's what you need to get this offseason. An ass that can cash the checks that your team's mouths keep kiting at the liquor store. A whole litany of problems are swelling underneath Big Ben's impending retirement. Ryan Shazier's likely career-ending injury, Mike Tomlin's eyes being bigger than his appetite. That analogy doesn't work for anything here. I just want to say that Mike Tomlin's eyes are always bigger than his appetite. Losing to the Jags, it's clear you need a big play linebacker in the middle or else you need to completely blow up your defensive scheme. Yinzers, unleash the hate. Jacksonville, well, you made it all the way to the AFC Championship game on defense, and then when you needed your defense to come through, you folded up like a pack-and-go crib. You really don't need to change much. If Bortles got you that far, it's hard to argue that he can't. If Marquise Lee walks, you might want to look up some options at wide receiver, and I can't wait until this team moves to London. Minnesota, drafting this late has put you in an awful position, as it's clear you're missing a bunch of pieces to get you out of the frozen hell that is Minnesota sports mediocrity. They say defense wins championships, but you have to score enough, and though he did a great job, you can't rely on Case Keenum or any of his injured backups. The Vikings are set for a challenging year next year. Also, way to fuck up the Super Bowl twice. New England, do you hear that? Do you hear that? It's the world's tiniest violin being rubbed up against by the world's tiniest penis, and that tiny penis violin song that is playing goes to the tune of Ha Ha! You had the opportunity to cement your legacy like jizz in Cameron Diaz's hair, yet you had to let Big Dick Nick do you dirty like this. Doesn't matter what you do this offseason, you'll pick last or next to last and be in the Super Bowl again. God damn it. Philadelphia. Oh, look who the big bad motherfuckers are now. After 50 years of suffering, God finally infected enough Philadelphia area grandmothers with lupus for the karmic universe to feel sorry for you to grant you a championship. So here's what you need to do during the off season. Number 1, start an online fundraiser like JJ Watt to fix your fucking city. 2, come up with a few recipes for horse shit. Number 3, enjoy this because all of the lupus-ridden grandmothers in Cleveland are coming for you. Just kidding, God would never let that happen, even if Big Dick Nick went there in free agency.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Is it football season yet? Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, or subscribe, and check out my link below to become an Airbnb host. I'm 5 Points Vids, and you made it to the end of this video.